Давненько не виделись.
Снова ты. Вот засада.
Ты украл моя собака. И теперь я с наслаждением убивать тебя. И вся твоя семья.
Да сколько ж можно? Я только из тюряги откинулся. Реально сегодня.
Здравствуйте, товарищи! Мы сейчас пообщаемся с замечательным актером Криспином Гловером. Вы его знаете по многим фильмам, начиная от «Назад, будущее», заканчивая вот недавним выходом фильма «Lucky Day», который у нас выходит в прокат. И «Ангелы Чарли», «Ангелы Чарли 2», который Full Throttle. Алиса Тренчи, есть много-много всего. Вы, конечно, его знаете, он отличный такой характерный актер. Вот сейчас мы с ним пообщаемся, будем общаться по-английски, так что не обессудьте. Мы как-нибудь субтитрами, наверное, все снабдим. Hi, Криспин.
Добрый день.
Yes. How are you?
Very well. I'm
here.
I'm in the Czech Republic, so I'm not too far.
Very nice. Very
Are
nice.
you doing the filming or having a rest?
No, I own property here, and I bought the property. It's an old chateau that was built in the 1600s. I bought it like 17 years ago. And I bought it for the purpose of making my own films. I've made two of my own feature films that I tour around with. I've never toured with it in Russia. I'd like to, but it never has happened yet. I've been in Russia a number of times, but not with my live shows and films. If somebody's watching, they should contact me on CrispinGlover.com because I'd like to come tour in Russia. I've been in Russia.
You can come to Comic-Con sometimes. Like we're having a Comic-Con Russia every year, and
do they show films?
Yeah,
No,
sometimes they show films, right?
Like
I'd love to come. I've never shown my films in Russian. I acted in a film in '92, a version of Crime and Punishment. I played Raskolnikov.
Yeah.
And then I've been in Russia since that. I always have a great time there, so I'd like to come back. But no, I bought the property here for making. I've made two feature films. I've produced, directed two feature films. This is my third feature film, and I'm finishing it right now. I've shot it on 35 millimeter negative. I have 18,000 square feet of sets that I built in the former horse stables for the property.
Wow.
And there's a 35 millimeter laboratory. I'm actually looking straight out. I'm in the office of the chateau looking at the former guardhouses, which is where the 35 millimeter laboratory is. And there's somebody working in one of the laboratory buildings on color correction right at this exact moment for the new film. So I'm here. I got here May 8th. To work on this, and then everything, shut down. And so most of the time I've been in isolation since I got here, but they handled it pretty well in Czech, and so things are opening back up.
You kind of stuck there.
Yeah.
What's that?
You kind of stuck there in Czech.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, I'm in the midst of getting a visa so I can stay here longer. I've had that place for 17 years, but Normally I just fly back and forth. Everything's easy, but so this is the first time I've not needed a visa till now. But now it's important because of the situation. If I left, I couldn't come back in to finish the film. So I've got to. I am sort of stuck just to get the film completed, basically.
So you half answered one of our questions. We wanted to ask you about your third movie. So why such a long, pause?
Why don't you? Yeah, the long pause between your second and the third movies. Like, when will it be? Ready.
I've shot my first two films. The second film I shot completely on sets, and the first film I shot only a little bit on sets. I prefer to shoot on sets, but I recognized after the second film I had put money into building sets, and I wanted to continue working on sets. So it was a couple of years after that that I bought this property. I actually purchased this property before I finished the second film. My second film, I did prints for it here at the former laboratories at Barandov Studios in Prague. those shut down, and we started a not-for-profit organization and purchased the 35 millimeter equipment, and I'm looking at the building where it's housed. Right, it's right in front of me. My eyes are on it right this second. But this film is, the first two films are part of what will be a trilogy, but this new film isn't part of the trilogy. I started developing this film the very year 2007, which was the year I premiered the second film in Sundance. And this has been a huge production. The first two films I shot on 16 millimeter and blew up to a 35 millimeter print. But this film is the first film I've shot on 35 millimeter. And I started shooting it in 2013. And then I was shooting at least one production segment every year until 2018. It's just, when you self-fund a film, my first film, What Is It?, which I premiered in Sundance in 2005, I started shooting that in 1996. It took me 9.5 years to make that film. Nobody was thinking about it because I hadn't made another film. But it took me 9.5 years to make that film. So to me, I can see from an outside perspective, it's like, oh, it seems like a long time. But essentially, it's about the same. I also shot the second film, Everything Is Fine, before I completed What Is It?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't, so it's like, I actually had two films that I worked on simultaneously for a number of years before I released them. So it seems like I had two films come out close to each other. But really, I'd been working on both of them for long periods of time. I fund the films myself. When you have a corporation, or even if you seek corporate money or some kind of government money or whatever, there's a large amount of money that's all comes together, and then everybody comes together, and the goal is to make it as quickly as possible and get it out as quickly as possible. But I fund the films myself, and I kind of piece them together over time. It's not the easiest way to make a film, but it's, for whatever reason, that's the way I've made all of my films, is a little bit by little bit.
So your fourth movie we're gonna see like in 2028, maybe.
My fourth movie? Well, the idea is that also I purchased this property here with the idea that I would be able to reutilize the sets. So I had the sets being built for this new production for 2.5 years. Because, normally you get a big amount of money on a film and everybody builds sets very quickly. But I had 3 Ukrainian workers that came from the Ukraine, and they lived on the property, and they built here for 2.5 years. So everything just takes a little bit of time. But the idea is that now I actually have a couple of productions that I would like to shoot on the same set. So that will make it I'll still have a high production value, but it won't take as long and it won't be quite as expensive. Now the only thing I have to wait for is this world pandemic to stop. And then, so it's true, with the world pandemic, we may not be seeing, who knows what kind of productions are going to be able to happen.
And when?
Right.
When it's all gonna,
we can only hope. Let me ask you the main question regarding Lucky Day. How do you feel about modern art?
How do I feel about modern what?
Modern art.
Like paintings,
Well, I'm a big proponent of surrealism, for example. I do like certain aspects of modern art. Like Roger Avery, I'm friends with Roger, who wrote and directed Lucky Day. And he definitely has a perspective about modern art, about art in general. But also, I think this film, Roger had gone to prison. He'd spent time in jail. And so I think, even though this is not like an actual recounting of what he went through, there are aspects of the film that have to do with him and his psychology, which I appreciate that about the movie. I mean, I know Roger, so I understand certain things that may not be quite as seemingly apparent in the film, but I feel like he was working things out as a good modern artist does. So the modern art section of the movie, he had an awareness of that when we were shooting it.
Yeah, would you bought the picture like this, like yourself? Would you bought the picture like this by like yourself, like for your home collection, for example? Like with
would I buy it?
Yeah. Would you?
Well,
how do you feel about this?
Well, I'm in it, and so I generally don't buy my own films. Like I usually don't watch my films. I watch my films that I direct, but I don't usually watch the films that I act in.
Like
unless,
never?
No, I'll watch them, but I didn't see Lucky Day until they didn't have a proper premiere for it. So there was an opening night showing of it in Beverly Hills on a nice little art house theater. And I think it's called the Fine Arts Theater. And so Roger was there, and after the film, Roger and I answered questions about it. But I wanted to see it with a regular audience because it's kind of an audience-pleasing kind of movie. It's the kind of movie that you should go see with an audience of people. I feel like. I mean, it works without that, but I think there's something about it. There's some humor to it, and it's just kind of that film. So I enjoyed seeing the film that way. Will I see it again? You know, if there was say a film festival that bought it out, I'll go see it for something like that. But I don't generally go see my films after I've done them. In fact, I'll see them if there's business for me to go see it. Like if I have to go do sound for the film, I'll do the sound and I'll watch the film. It's not that I don't like to see the films, but I prefer it if it's kind of like an event. If there's a premiere, I'll go support the film. But if it's not something like that, I've gone through the experience and I enjoy doing the experience. But it's like my own films, I spend a lot of time dealing with, like today I was doing color correction. We were going over all these different nuances and aspects. There's a complex color correction element in the new film. It's a lot of different time periods. So I'll spend a lot of time on that. But I feel like as an actor, it's like you do the performance. It's a collaborative element. There's a fun in doing that. It's an enjoyable experience. And then you go see it. Usually it's an enjoyable experience. And then, I don't know, I feel funny about going and revisiting, unless there's a reason to do it. But yeah.
We asked about the paintings. Do you remember this bit when all the paintings that main hero Nina Dobrev was painted? It was
covered by blood
of her critics. That was kind of funny.
Yeah,
I think very funny. And would you buy some kind of that picture for yourself?
Would I buy a picture covered with somebody's blood?
Not with blood, but something like this.
Oh, that like abstract expression.
Yeah.
The picture which is like full of symbolism like that, But...
Well, in terms of modern art, I tend toward liking more representational art as opposed to abstract expressionism. I appreciate things about abstract expressionism, but I tend toward liking, in terms of modern art, I tend toward liking surrealism. I tend toward liking the symbolists.
What do you think about Andy Warhol you played?
I like him as an artist. My favorite things that he did probably was his film work, though.
Oh,
and a lot of his film work is not readily available. because there's a Warhol museum in Pittsburgh that you can go and you can see the movies that he directed. There's the movies that are called Andy Warhol films, like Trash, Bad, but those aren't directed by Warhol. Those are directed by Paul Morrissey. But there are ones made in the mid to late 60s that Warhol, I mean, there's a lot of controversy as to who did what, but he did an earlier version of Clockwork Orange called Vinyl, which is a very interesting movie. It's called Vinyl. I don't think it's easy to find on the internet. Maybe. It's not supposed to be shown because it's only supposed to be shown in museums because he didn't really have the rights for certain things. It might be that Morrissey had something to do with those as well. It's a little bit debated. But I find those very interesting. I like his series of lithographs called the Car Crash series, where it's like there's something kind of dark. I mean, he's interesting. I'm glad I got to play him, and I had met him once at Madonna and Sean Penn's wedding.
Oh, you met him?
I met him, yeah.
Wow.
And not too long before he died, just like I think 2 years before he died. And I talked to him a little bit. It was interesting. And it's like after I talked to him, I stood back and I thought he'd be an interesting person to play. And I noticed how he held himself and moved, and I studied it with that concept. And so as soon as I heard that there was a Warhol part in any movie, which happened to be this Oliver Stone film, I went for it. And I had met Oliver Stone. I didn't read for him, but I just had a meeting with him for Platoon. And it was a good meeting. I'm not in the film, but I had a good meeting with him. And so I said to my agents to just get some kind of audition or something for me, and they did, and it worked out. Okay,
we're told that we have not a lot of time to.
Okay.
And so I think the best questions we have.
Yeah.
Yes. What do we?
Okay, you played very often eccentric characters, sometimes violent characters. Killers, strange people, etc., etc. How do you enjoy being different from your real self? Because, like in interviews and in this interview, you're very calm, maybe the calmest person on earth. Like,
calm, intelligent,
yes.
like kind.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah. So, how do you like playing killers?
Well, I started acting professionally at age 13. And I started professional acting class at age 15. Much of my early acting class had to do with learning technique through improvisation. Not comedy improvisation, but technique. And I tended toward always, even at a young age, being interested in unusual, psychotic, strange characters, even at a young age. So I don't.
Can you name something?
I'm sort of like ready for playing unusual characters. It doesn't surprise me that that's what I tend toward getting offered. I know I can play different types of things if I need to. For me, it's. A long time ago, it was more uncomfortable for me to do interviews because my initial plan was not to ever do interviews as an actor. Now it doesn't matter to me because I promote my films as a filmmaker. So you kind of it's a different thing. There's a part of me that doesn't love doing interviews as an actor. At this point, it doesn't bother me anymore. But at a young age, when I was not doing as much, I wasn't being a filmmaker so much. There's a part of me that feels like an actor shouldn't reveal themselves in an interview. Like Jack Nicholson, if you look at it, he really hasn't done many on-camera interviews in his whole career. There was the behind-the-scene thing that Stanley Kubrick's daughter did, and then I think there was one that he did for I'm forgetting the name of the film he did with Tom Cruise, where he plays a military person. He did some interview for that. As far as I know, those might be some of the only 2 interviews that he's done. And I've heard him say that it's difficult enough, where you're trying to get people to have a suspension of their beliefs about you, and then to have extra footage of you being a certain way. But like I say, I at some point, once I started making my own films, it became more important just to be selling the films. I mean, it's like Kubrick, he didn't do that. He was a filmmaker, and there are very few interviews with him, which are fascinating interviews to listen to. So I don't know. I feel like it's probably a good thing for me to do the interviews, but in a certain way, doing the interviews was harder for me than playing the character.
Oh yeah. Do you have the favorite Kubrick movie? I
have many, a number of them, but sometimes I go back and forth as to which one is my favorite, but certainly at the tops of the list would be Barry Lyndon, Clockwork Orange, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Doctor Strangelove, The Killing. I like those. The Shining, of course, is excellent. But Barry, I go back and forth when I see Barry Lyndon, when I see Clockwork Orange, and when I see 2001. Every time I watch one of those, I feel like, well, that's got to be my favorite one. Most recently, I went and saw Barry Lyndon projected in Los Angeles, and I really loved that film. That's sort of his most, I feel like, underrated film. And I'm sure it's one that will continue to escalate in appreciations of excellence, because it's quite a movie.
Oh, very nice. So we've been told that our time is almost up.
Yeah,
so we can ask maybe 2 little questions, not the deep ones, but funny ones. So one question is, what is your kill count in Lucky Day? Did you count?
Oh, well, I could do it now. 1.
I counted like 8 or 9 characters with names.
Right.
And a bunch of characters in the art
gallery.
Yeah.
Well, the art show, that's pretty. I don't think it's countable how many there.
But no, it's kind of countable. So it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then like 30.
100.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot. Yes. I should count. I count. I don't know the exact number.
Is it your highest kill count in the movies? I think so.
It might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Well, I in Beowulf, that Roger also co-wrote. I think it's also an unknown number, because I come in and ravage a whole house. It's not known how many people. So it's funny. 2 of my highest kill counts are in Roger Ever involved screenplays.
And then the last one, what do you think? The Thin Man, is he alive or is he dead? What do you think?
I think the Thin Man is alive.
Yeah, very nice to hear, because I almost cried a little bit in theater when I watched the theatrical cut. Yeah. In theatrical cut, he's dead, almost certainly dead. But in unrated cut, he's maybe alive. So if
in the first, it was at the end of the first one. He was clearly the Thin Man was clearly dead, and then I came back in the second film, and then I seemingly was dead for that. Had that particular incarnation, had there been a third one in that incarnation, we talked about it when we were making the film. The idea is, yes, I would have come back and been alive, but that version didn't make enough money. It made money. But it was a higher. They spent more money on the second one than on the first one.
Yes.
So it didn't make enough to garner a third film of that. I know they just made one. I haven't seen it. And I don't think the new one made that much money.
No, it's not very fun.
Oh, okay.
It's not very fun. But
yeah, I haven't seen it, so I don't know. But yeah, I had a great time. I enjoyed playing that character. That was a fun character.
He was
it was
very
another
fun,
assassin.
really fun.
It was an assassin
He was villain, then he was anti-hero in second one. Yeah, very nice, deep character. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Crispin. We would like to talk to you
I feel like
longer, but we have our limits.
I think I'm supposed to be on another.
Yeah. That's right.
I'm sorry that
I want to come out to Russia. So if anybody who's watching, contact crispinglover.com. I'd like to come out and tour with my shows and films.
Maybe talk about your books later or something like that.
At my shows, I perform an hour-long live presentation of my profusely illustrated books. And I've never performed it in Russia, so I'd love to come out there.
Because I felt like...
Yeah, we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk to some people.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. Well, good to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Nice to meet you too. It was very nice.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.